in agriculture and cattle ranching, people don't generally retire in the family business. So, interesting is, in a normal person's career, I'm 42, Luke's 39.
39.
But we would be mid-career in our professional journey probably. But my father, who would be considered kind of at the top of the family business ladder right now, he didn't move into that role until he himself was 66 years old, because his father was actively running the business and actively kind of the head honcho until he passed away. So in agriculture, family business, and cattle ranching, there's no retirement age.
That was Catherine Neumayr, a seventh-generation rancher at family-owned V8 Ranch near Houston, Texas. We'll hear more from Catherine and her husband Luke later in the episode. Welcome to the Family Business Family Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Needles, editor-in-chief of Family Business Magazine. This episode also features more of my conversation with two generations of leadership at Total Office Solutions. But first, in this interview, we chat with Peter Begalla, conference chair here at MLR Media and founder of JPB Consulting Group. He joins us to explain the concept of shadow governance, how rising generation family members can begin practicing collaborative decision-making before they're officially in charge, helping to build trust, confidence, and stronger governance long before a formal transition takes place. Hey, Peter. Good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Of course.
So we're talking about shadow governments. Don't put your tinfoil hat on just yet. Not that kind of shadow government, but in a family business, setting up shadow governance. And so let's start with, what is that? What does that mean in the context of a family enterprise?
Well, it's when a group of family members basically decide that they're going to do things in making decisions a little bit differently than they've been done before. And you may not have full agreement with those who are in control or kind of going in a certain direction or have been going in a certain direction for a number of years. And the new group that presupposes that they will come into ownership kind of look each other in the eye and say, hey, we need to do this differently because market conditions, family dynamics, any number of things are kind of dictating that they will have to make decisions fundamentally differently over their assets, be it one business or an enterprise.
Makes sense. And so how have you seen these come about? Those moments when they look each other in the eye and they say, we got to start getting together here.
Well, it's a couple of things. As I said, the market could be getting different and more complex, and some of the older models are not working. Or there's just more shareholders or future shareholders sitting around the table saying, hey, we have to start thinking about shareholder objectives and what we want, and electing a board, moving forward, deciding through collaborative, good, objective decision process versus by decree, if it's a founder or if it's an older generation. Or the dynamics are just such that the tone and texture of the decision-making is not psychologically safe. It's difficult. It's kind of fraught with a lot of emotion versus objective, good, heartfelt debate.
And once they decide that they should do this, what's the kind of the first step?
Yeah, so the shadow governance, is really the worst case scenario. That's where you're really doing it off the books. And
right.
What's happened is that everybody's looked each other in the eye and said, hey, we got to do this differently. And the older generation or those in charge will not like it. And so let's just kind of talk about what we want, where we want to go. And we won't tell them that we're doing that. The other model is, hey, we're going forward. We're starting to think about, when we have to make decisions around ownership or board kind of decisions, this is our process. This is the culture of decision making that we want to foster. And we're just going to practice. We're going to kind of move it forward. Certainly control still resides with you, Mom. And you get to decide what happens fundamentally, but we have to kind of set some new norms and some new cultural kind of features to all of this. And it might be a process. It might just be, hey, don't emulate how Mom used to make decisions. Or grandpa used to make decisions this way quietly without a lot of input. We don't want you to do that, brother. We want to be part of this. Um, so yeah, I mean, to answer your question very directly, first is, hey, we want things to be different in terms of how we talk to each other, what our process is. It may mean formalizing shareholder meetings, maybe formalizing a board, maybe formalizing a council. Any number of things could come about. But when you say, "Hey, we want to do it different," you need the reason for doing it different, and then second, you need the rules of the road. This is how we make decisions. This is how we talk to each other. This is the process that we go through. And those are from timing to respectful discourse to steps along the way, who gets input over what kinds of decisions. Any number of documents start to come about in this process.
Yeah, and you kind of anticipated where I was going next because, that word shadow, it makes it sound clandestine, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be, right? And so what happens if the current authority isn't quite ready to let, next gens or whoever it is in to actually make decisions, but they also don't want to do it secretly or behind anybody's back. How do they kind of set that up so that it can be a shadow that
Yeah.
is
So
implemented alongside it, right?
yeah, consistency. Just say, hey, we're going to meet on a regular basis for these types of matters, if you will, and we're going to talk about it. We'll make some decisions. We'll write things down. We may not. It may culminate in policy, right? Of family employment
Yeah.
distributions, dividends. Any number of things. It may kind of start heading in that direction, but the control still lies with the older generation, if you will. And that's the common kind of scenario. Uh,
Yeah.
but with the idea that, hey, this is how we would do it. If
Right.
we were really running this thing today, we would do it this way. And then that puts the burden on those in control to say, well, my constituents are doing things a little bit differently, and I'm watching, and they're actually doing well together. They're thoughtfully, and objectively debating concepts that are meaningful to them as shareholders. They're writing things down. They seem to be building trust and confidence with each other and the process. I guess I don't want to go against what their outcome is or what their decision is. I still retain that control, but I'm actually becoming more and more assured and trusting that they've been practicing and connecting. And then I'm just kind of there as the controller, the decider
Yeah.
to actually just make it, say, yeah, of course, that's you guys decided that way. That's great. If something materially is wrong, right, it's a bad decision that comes out of it, you still have that fail safe in there. But the concept is that you're trying to build trust and predictability around decision making and a culture of, hey, this is how we're going to do it. And oh my gosh, older generation, you don't like that? Well, that's your prerogative. And this is the hard part
Yeah.
for those who are younger. And I've been in this situation with families for a number of years where they build policy, they build a number of things, but the older generation doesn't pay attention to it and often vetoes it or goes around it to bestow
Yeah.
favoritism and control to the grandkids. That's actually really pernicious and a harder scenario to stamp out, if you will.
Yeah. I love that idea of it being sort of framed as practice, right? Because I had a conversation with somebody recently where they were saying that the patriarch of the family was one of those patriarchs who doesn't necessarily think the next generation is ever going to be ready, doesn't really see them as having the aptitude. And once they got to see them in action, interacting with each other, and the patriarch may not even have agreed with what the conclusions they were coming to, but just seeing that like they had their act together, they were organized and they worked together, really, I think gave the patriarch some relief, right? That, oh my gosh, like they have their act together more than I thought they did.
Yeah, it's a way to kind of build competence. Again, the shadow part is at its worst, is that you've got a really difficult personality who's in control at that point in time, and you're basically saying, "We're gonna do it differently. We have to do it differently. Otherwise, if one of us emulates how he did it before us, we're gonna kill him." Right? We're
Right.
just gonna
Right.
nope, this thing's gonna fall apart. And so
Yeah.
so it's the emotional intelligence as a sibling group or as a cousin group to say, we can't do it the same way. And oftentimes, as in your example, the patriarch or matriarch's like, "Oh yeah, okay, I see that they're coming along. All right, I'll begrudgingly let that one go. I'll pick my
Yeah.
battles a little bit more judiciously. I'll remain in control, but I do see that they're moving along. They
Yeah.
become less of a skeptic if they're a cautious
Exactly.
kind of personality. Sometimes you can just, by being sweet and nice and thoughtful and predictable, over time, maybe that it doesn't have to be in the shadows. It can come forward.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, super interesting topic and something that I guess I had heard a little bit about, but I had never really heard in these terms. And so it's really, really interesting. So
Well, I use the shadow government phrase provocatively. I'm
yeah.
not advocating for a coup or anything, but I am seeing that the reality is sometimes you just have to practice differently and maybe just kind of make a commitment to those who want to do it differently. Yeah, I'll do it differently with you. We can't replicate what the generation before us did.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thanks, Peter. I appreciate you taking the time to chat about this really
Uh,
interesting topic.
you bet. All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you. In this interview, we hear more from Total Office Solutions co-founder Linda Monette and her daughters, Amy Monette Linton and Megan Monette McDaniel. They share how their family navigates disagreements, prepares the next generation to lead, and builds a team that can carry the business forward for years to come. Megan, you were talking about how you talk about the business at home on holidays. You can't really separate work and life, whatever that means. But when there are disagreements, when there are, when you do butt heads with each other or with your parents, how do you deal with those disagreements and protect your relationships, like your relationships as family? How do you deal with that and protect those while you're also dealing with disagreements in the business?
Well, if I can start, I do think that we do earlier I said this is hard and it's great on the outside, but inside, sometimes it's not as pretty. And I feel like as the ownership family, it's important for our employees and the people around us to see a united front. And so it's
Yeah.
never a good thing to be bickering or fighting and fussing in front of people because we're not even necessarily fighting. We're fighting for the same thing. We're not against each other. Okay. And I feel like we do a really nice job of, if there's a disagreement or an argument, doing it behind closed doors so that the united front of we are stable and predictable and you can come to us and we're not going to overreact because we're the foundation of these companies. So I will say that that is something that we're really good at, is when there is that volatility of an argument or some decision that's being made that, Amy and I might not agree with, but it's for the better of the companies. There's always another reason why. And so I do think that we do a good job of that. So, Amy, anything to add? No, no. We're not
Yeah. No,
clouds in the middle of the break room, even though that might be fun.
well, we've definitely talked to some families over the years that have had, literal fist fights in
Oh
front
yeah.
of everybody. And yeah, it's to your point. You need to be able to show a united front. You need to be able to show stability because, otherwise, no one's going to feel safe or supported in that environment.
Well, we don't talk about this. I really feel like I painted the picture of like we only ever talk about work. We don't. Well, and to be fair, my boundaries are at my own house, right? So not so even though my family is it's been an evolution of a family business for our lives. Yes. And so it's sometimes it's not easy when you're the person that has to answer the phone because there's something going on at work to stop that because you're having dinner with your family. It's been just an inherent nature for all of us to be the problem solver and to be there to help. And so it is kind of hard for it to be separate. Now, in my own household, we're the only people with the answers. And that rare,
Yeah.
that's part of, I'll say, the succession process is when you are those people, it is a full-time job sometimes because that's the choice you're making. You're choosing to make that part of your life. It doesn't have to be a separation. Now, for and my daughter and my own small family, I try to make that distinction because I want her at the age that she's at to understand that she's important. And
Yeah.
mom has mom work time, and we talk about that a lot, and we talk about what that means, and with my husband and his business as well. And so we definitely try to do a good job of showing her what it is like to have hard work and work ethic and what an entrepreneur is. And she's seen that from her grandparents and from her aunt and from her parents, but to also know that it's okay that that doesn't have to be everything. Um,
Yeah.
but we also keep her part of the fold. Like she still gets part of those discussions too. So it's not, I won't say it's a bad thing. And I don't know, maybe she becomes a third generation. We have no idea. My two and my three and your one. Exactly. We don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
but I think it's hard sometimes when you're in a position where you're choosing everyone else around you, the 300 families, the people that we work with, the people we work for. Um, that's a life decision. And I don't think that any of us have decided that's a bad choice.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely, and I think all of those are really great points, and really something that everybody listening has dealt with and is dealing with, right? It's always very hard to kind of toe that line, and you really can't. Sometimes work is going to bleed more into your home life than you would like, and it just happens. But trying to set up boundaries, I think, is definitely the healthy thing. Um, and so I wanted to talk a little bit because you were talking a little bit before about how you made it through COVID, and obviously COVID was a huge disruptor of office work. So I wanted to talk, specifically about the business. Workplace services, commercial relocation industries, they've changed dramatically over the years, even before COVID, and I'm sure COVID was like a huge disruptive force. How has the company adapted to these changes? And how have you kept that culture that you were talking about before and maintained client relationships, which obviously are so important for a business like yours?
So COVID for us was probably 180,000 degrees away from what everybody would consider. Um, our furniture business was slow, obviously.
Yeah.
No one's buying furniture, but they bought
Yeah.
tables and chairs to take to people's homes.
Ah, okay. All
Okay.
right.
And on the
Yeah, yeah.
side of that, we had a lot of people working from home. So a lot of companies found the opportunity to divest in real estate. And so we spent a ton of time liquidating, decommissioning properties all over the world. Not just in the
Yeah.
States, not just in the United States, but all over the world. Because we are a one-stop shop, we can make all of those connectivity across that brand. Hence where Megan's forte is that we can take someone out of business in 48 hours, completely back to here, landlord, you're done with your space. We've removed everything. Client is good to go. People are moved home or they've gone away completely as far as their office spaces. And that was probably the most lucrative years we've ever had in business.
Yeah.
When people think of COVID as a disruptor, it was a great disruptor for us
Yeah, sure, sure.
because people were literally giving things back to landlords. You've got a lot of empty space now. People are coming back to work. Guess what happens? Now they've got to buy furniture. Now they have to move people in. And so it was
Right.
an interesting circle for us.
Yeah.
And for us, our whole situation was how do we solve the best for our clients? What can we do? How can we help you? And the answer was always yes. What sometimes gets us in trouble. It gets me in trouble by calling. And my client needs X, Y, and Z. And she's like, did you already say yes? Yeah. Yes.
Until you're good with it.
Thank you.
So Linda, we've been talking obviously a lot about succession. What have been the biggest lessons that you've learned from this process that you're still in right now, right? Of gradually handing over responsibility while ensuring that the next generation has room to lead its own way, right? Because a lot of times we hear, well, if the founders are still involved, they're running everything and you don't really have any space as the next generation to call some shots and to make some decisions. So Linda, what have you kind of learned through this process about succession?
Well, we do have a succession plan in process. And what
Yeah.
we've been doing is we've had people to retire. We're bringing in people that are more that my daughter's ages. So they're working in the business and bringing them up to speed so that they have people to support them like we had that have already left the business.
Yeah.
Well, this surrounds them with capable people to help them move better in the positions that they want to have. So,
Yeah.
So how do you
yeah,
That's
feel?
a really interesting
I feel
point. Yeah.
I feel it's great. I get to see it, so I know everything is working out better for them and for the company, and they have trust and they make their decisions. And I think that's the way it should be. Is you
Yeah.
grow the company
you grow the people around them like we had in this business.
Yeah, you've made
Yeah.
Yeah, we made some really good choices.
well, you have us. So.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point, though, that you make about succession. Obviously, it's very important to have a more senior generation that's been doing this a long time and kind of show you the way. But it's also really important to have a bunch of people who are roughly around your same age, your same generation, who you can grow up with in the business, right? And they'll be, eventually you'll be the senior generation together, but it's to have that whole support team that you can grow up with is really important. And if it's a family that has, 20 siblings and cousins all working together, that's kind of built in. But when it's not that, you have to make that,
Well,
right?
but generations have worked here, so we have employees bringing their kids and grandkids along.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that
It's
helps.
very cool. Yeah.
And I'm very comfortable with it. What I do now is I have a team in the accounting department that back me up and help me. So I think it's a good thing. I think they're building a good team around them that if something were to happen, we're golden for the future.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, that's the mention of the future is a good segue into my last question here. And obviously it's not a simple question, but for Amy and Megan specifically, and Amy, I'll start with you. What do you envision for the future of the business? Where would you like to see it go?
I think leading together, Megan and I, working towards that for sure. I think the interesting thing about it is sometimes I want to go full force. I'm a
Yeah.
I'm a just go.
Let's just
Um,
do it. Yeah.
and I'll ask questions later. And
Yeah.
I've seen it. I know what you guys did. I've been there. Like I know, and so slowing myself down and kind of just making sure that I'm not missing steps along the way,
Yeah.
because of the excitement factor of, oh my god, I get to make a decision. It's
Yeah.
like you're
Yeah.
gonna trust me. I'm
Yeah.
not a 16-year-old.
Yeah,
with
and then I
a
make
driver's license.
16 decisions. You're like, oh, you needed to know about those. So it's
Right.
those things right now that I'm just personally having to like take perspective of going, okay, just take a second and know that you can still utilize the people around you. The history is still there. That's my personal challenge that
Yeah.
because I've been doing this for a long time and I've been doing
Yeah.
multiple positions. And so um sometimes realizing that you don't know everything and that's okay is still
Yeah.
something that the second generation still has to figure out.
Yeah.
Being a firstborn, I think that's inherent nature to me that
Yeah.
I don't need direction. I got this. But
I can relate to that for sure. Yeah.
well, Megan's over here, she's like, you did what? Yeah. And I'm like, or I'm like, hey, we're equals. We're not the same age at all. Not a low key gap, but thing to myself, the younger child, the little sister is, my parents have a hard thing, and that Amy and I aren't super close in age, and we have two very different experiences, and they build upon each other. And so,
Yeah.
the succession process, I don't want the decisions my parents have to make for the two of us because we're so different yet so the same in all the right ways. We feed off of each other. We're the yin to the yang. Amy's been in sales. She's had leadership time within the company. She's really good at operations. She's great at the insurance, at the checking all the boxes, making sure that the train stays on the tracks. And then I'm over here. If I have some of the operations, I've gotten a 20-year experience in a very, very quick time frame that, to try to catch up with her. And that's what I feel like I've been doing while also making my own path and realizing that we aren't the same and that we don't have to catch up with each other because we do really make a whole person. Like, I know that sounds strange.
We're one.
We're one. High five. Yeah. Co-leading the companies, one person or, mom and dad have done a great job at really giving an example of how two partners can work together. And I'm excited to see what the future holds with Amy and I. And like I said, as we are so different yet so the same, and our experiences are so different. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because, what are we going to come up with that's going to take us to the next level and help grow the companies and help them be more successful? I mean, at the end of the day, it's about the people that we employ. It's not necessarily even about us. It's about making sure that there are jobs in the economy and that they're getting paychecks and they're happy where they're working and they're healthy and they're able to put their kids through college and put food on the table. And we just get so much, at least I get so much out of that. So it's my perspective.
Well, I love it. Again, it's a credit to you, Linda and Michael. The fact that the second generation, that the two big issues are for you, Amy, you have to take a step back and not make so many decisions so quickly. And that for you, Megan, it's like figuring out how to work with your other member of your generation. Because a lot of times, especially in the second generation, the biggest problem is we don't get to make any decisions because mom and dad are still hanging around, over our shoulder, and we feel completely constrained. And the only thing that we can really the thing that we're grappling with more than anything, it's just like, how do we like break free and actually have our own identity? It sounds like you have that, which is really
I mean, I
huge.
ask for forgiveness a lot. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting, and like our age gap in that Amy is very much so like make the decision, ask questions later, and like in a
Right.
thoughtful way, right?
Well,
And I'm
I
over
want to
here
see
like,
what you're going to do. Like, I want to see the thought process and I want to know
Yeah.
how you get there. And that just helps me understand more about you and how we work together. And sometimes she's like, but you like what?
I'm like, why do I have to explain? Like, let me do what I want to do. I'm in charge.
Yeah.
And she's like, you're not in charge. I'm like, yes, I'm in charge. What are you talking about? Like, so we have our own, sometimes putting the kid sister hat on, I'm like, okay, guys, come on. Like,
Yeah.
so leading that is always fun.
In this interview, we chat with Catherine Neumayr and her husband Luke, who are both seventh-generation ranchers at family-owned V8 Ranch, one of the world's largest Brahmin cattle ranches. They discuss what succession looks like when leadership transitions happen later than in many other industries, how they each found their way into the family business, and why balancing tradition and innovation is essential to preparing the ranch for its next chapter. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Luke. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Zach. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, same here. So I love talking to families that run ranches. We've actually done it before, and it was not something that I kind of realized was such a thing in the family business world before I started working here and doing what I do, and I just love it. It's fascinating to me. So for listeners who may not be familiar with V8 Ranch, can you tell us a little bit about the history of the business, how your family became involved with it, and then how each of you kind of found your way into roles there?
Sure. Well, our family business is called V8 Ranch, and we are a registered Brahman and Shorthorn cattle operation, and we're located on the Gulf Coast in Texas. We're about an hour from the city of Houston, an hour towards the Gulf, so a little closer to the beach than Houston. We have customers all over the world. This is all our family does. My dad always jokes and says, we don't have any doctors, lawyers in the family
Or oil wells.
or oil wells. We just make it on.
Yeah.
And that's all that our family has known for many generations. I'm a seventh generation cattle rancher. And then here at V8 Ranch, there's 4 generations of our family that are still actively here on the ranch at this time. A lot of people always wonder, what is V8 named after? Now, what's interesting is when I'm telling people V8, I say it's V8 like the tomato juice.
Right.
It's actually the founder of V8 Ranch was a person named Howard Parker, and he was a Ford automobile dealer. And founded V8 in 1944 in East Texas in a town called Center. But interestingly enough, in 1971, Mr. Parker's eyesight was declining to the point where he couldn't visually see the cattle to mate and produce cattle that looked like he thought was typical of the brand. And he cared so much about that visual appraisal of cattle that he decided he wanted to find another family to carry on what he had started. And grandfather purchased the V8 Ranch cattle from Mr. Parker in 1971 and moved the herd here to our ranch, where it's been since then. But it's named after the V8 Ford engine.
Gotcha. That is so fascinating and such a cool story. And I love stories where a family bought another business and made it their own and turned it into their own multi-generational family business. And so how did each of you other than that, it's just part of what you do in this family, right? But how did you each kind of find your way into this work? Was there ever, for you, Catherine, was there ever an option otherwise?
I think what's interesting is being being a daughter in a ranching family. I don't think it was always expected that I would end up back part of the family ranch. As much as you hope that you would find someone to marry that wanted to be part of the family ranch. Uh,
Yep.
and so Luke always jokes and says that after he married me, graduated A&M, married me, Texas A&M. We both went to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Every other male member of Catherine's family, I came back on the ranch. You know, uh, my background, as far as what I enjoy doing, is in marketing and graphic design and those things. And I'm able to do that within my role here at our family business. So I think it's kind of the modern evolution of a female rancher or a female person in agriculture. It's a kind of a mix of your typical what people think of at a ranch, what people are doing. I don't ride horses by any means, but there is a lot of outdoor work with the cattle. But I also still get to scratch that creative itch and do marketing and things like that make it really fulfilling work for me.
Yeah, and I definitely, in a little bit, I want to get more into that whole idea. What people imagine when they think of a ranch and what a ranch really is today. But Luke, Catherine mentioned it. You married into this family, and obviously you had an interest in this, and I know you have a background in this. So tell us me a little bit about how this all worked out.
Yes, so I'm an Indiana Angus boy,
Okay.
the resident Yankee, as my father still refers to me down here. Catherine and I actually met at a cattle show in South Dakota. And then I followed her from Indiana to South Dakota on and down to Texas A&M. And I'm still here today. But
Yeah.
like Catherine said, I was low man on the totem pole, and some days I still feel like I am. I got to do the jobs that maybe other people didn't want to do. And they're like, maybe the Yankee can go take pictures of these cattle for sale and try to sell something in Thailand when it's 1,000,000 degrees out here because I don't want to. And that's a job we can delegate to him.
Right.
Really, that's kind of how I guess my roles here have evolved. Is I started with smaller tasks, things that maybe people didn't want to do, or if I messed them up, it didn't matter that much. To where
Yeah.
it kind of show that I had the chops or not have the chops to do certain things, and then work
Yeah.
my way up and broaden my scope or skill set of things that I do. And it's very different now than what it was, years ago. And I feel like every single day there's something new that's coming along. For how many years did your dad bring the cattle?
Well, that kind of leads into an interesting thing that I wanted to share about our particular family business, which is,
Yeah.
But I wasn't done yet.
but it's it in a brief way. Um, in agriculture and cattle ranching, people don't generally retire in the family business. So, interesting is, in a normal person's career, I'm 42, Luke's 39.
39.
But we would be mid-career in our professional journey probably. But I wouldn't say that Luke's still low man on the totem pole by any means. But my father, who would be considered kind of at the top of the family business ladder right now, he didn't move into that role until he himself was 66 years old because his father was actively running the business and actively kind of the head honcho until he passed away. So in agriculture, family business, and cattle ranching, you know, there's no retirement age. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing is that, my dad didn't take the reins and become the official kind of boss of V8 until he was at an age when most of his contemporaries, they were retired. Along those lines, so one of the things Luke does now is brand the cattle, which is a required form of identification on cattle is a firebrand type of cattle that we raise, which are Brahman. But that is a relatively new thing. Actually, when my dad kind of took the reins when he was 66 years old, I guess now that he was finally in that role, he decided he didn't like or really want to continue doing that, he'd pass it to you.
But so he, let's say for 66, not for 66 years, but 20,
Right.
a long time, because his dad
Yeah.
for him until he couldn't do it. And we were out, it was like day 3 of branding. It was triple digit days. We were all hot. And towards the end of it, my role before actually put the irons on the cattle was to hand the irons to Catherine's dad. That was my
Yeah.
taking from the branding pot, giving them to him, going back and forth. Well, I was going to give him one, and he just said, "Hey, you're branding these next ones. I'm done." And I thought,
Yeah.
excuse me? Well, like, for this, there was nothing. And I thought, like, maybe he might hold my hand a little bit through it and say, like, okay, trace on the leg where this is going to go. He just went and sat down and said, "You've got it."
Yeah.
And it was terrifying. But, so many jobs that I have now, back to the roles and bring the spotlight back on me. The role that I do now, that's really how I just kind of got these jobs. Was somebody didn't want to do it. They said, "Hey, Luke, you go do this." I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And being in a family business like we are, especially kind of marrying into this and not being here from day one, I'm not going to say, "Hey, let me brand the cows. Let me do this."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Whoever has done that for years continue to do that. But Catherine's dad is unique in a way that there's not a lot of teaching or coaching that goes on. You have to kind of learn by observation. And then it's, what's the expression, like, what is, like, thrown to the fire? What,
Thrown in the deep end, right? Yeah. Thrown into the fire. Yeah.
baptism by fire. That's what I was looking for. And that's
Yes.
what it is. And it's
Yeah.
very nerve-wracking when the guy that has done it for years and is a very well-known person in this industry is sitting right behind me watching it happen. And then 5 head later gives some critique and says, like, "Oh, well, you need to make sure you do this." I'm like, "You've been sitting there. Why didn't you tell me, like, when I put it on there? Because these are permanent firebrands. They're not going anywhere."
Right.
That's, here I am knocking on 40's door. And I think most people that are our age have defined roles or maybe upper level management type positions. And that's just not the way that things work here until somebody decides they don't want them. And then, then we get them. And that's, an ever evolving thing. How this ranch
Well,
works.
that was going to be my question because that it is really interesting that that's how ranching works. Although I think you probably would be surprised at how many family businesses in other industries also operate that way, where somebody just hangs on until they can't hang on anymore, and then the next person up finally gets a shot, right? And obviously, that's not probably the best way to approach succession planning. And so I wanted to get a sense, like, because we are going to talk about, as I mentioned before, how this is really sophisticated business. It's not to just say just a ranch, but there's a lot to it. It's a real business. And so is there discussion and thought about, hey, maybe there should be not necessarily a retirement age, but more of a planned succession for generations going forward, where maybe some of these things get passed down a little more gradually?
Yes, I think I think those discussions are had within our own family as far as
Yeah.
will affect the next generation, which would be our son. But things have changed so much in my lifetime. I think things are better than they were maybe when my parents were my age, as far as being in a family business. Um, but no, I think it's challenging. Just
Yeah.
so challenging. And little things within our family business that are always difficult. For example, if people were to say, like, "Well, what's your job title?" I always joke and say family member at a family owned ranch. I mean,
Right.
um, even my dad, who I feel like is the front man of our business, the elder, for lack of a better term, he would never say he was the owner of that business. He would say he's the manager of that business, and even so, he'd say it with a little bit of not shame, but he would not want to offend any other family members, including me or Luke. He everyone
Yeah.
has to be so aware in a family business of how other members of the family feel or how they perceive your roles and things like that. And you know, as far as the next generation, we're lucky. Just Luke and I, we just have one son, and so when I think one child, not just one son and other children, just one son, one. Um, so when I think about the future, I think, gosh, it's a little less complicated because there's just one that will pass what we have on to. But I certainly think it gets complicated.
Yeah.
Especially when I think about when I'm 65 years old, I certainly want to be retired. Uh, in a way, I will no doubt still be ranching. And I have no doubt about that, but hopefully in a way where my son is able to, in his prime, uh, enjoy more of an ownership and management role in it. And I think that will be possible.
Yeah.
And
Well, oh, go ahead, Luke.
But
I'm sorry. I cut you
something
off.
else that I notice is Catherine's mom is very ready to, I don't want to say retire, but have kind of that retirement life to where if they want to go to the beach or go to the mountains or simply go down to the ranch we have that's closer to Mexico with no Wi-Fi and sit down there and not be bothered for a week.
Yeah.
Very much looking forward to that, and will kind of urge Catherine's dad to say like, hey, I think they can do this, or somebody else, or you don't have to be there and do all of this. But that's all Catherine's dad has known since he graduated from A&M. He came back to the ranch and he's been here to this day. So I think a little bit in the back of his mind, he's thinking like, I don't know how to do anything else.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
like got this firm hold on it. He's like, it's mine and not anybody else's. If he lets go of that, he doesn't know what else he's going to grab onto.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's something, we all live right here on the ranch. If I look down that way a few pastures, I see her parents' house, or can go back that way and see other family members. So it's one of those very nuanced things that it's a family business, and we all love this family business. But for those that have been in a family business, it has its own complete set of rules and tricky things to navigate. And agriculture is something that, I looked at some statistics the other day, and I think like the average age of a rancher in the United States is something like 62.1 years old. Like,
Wow.
it's old. And that's where we are really kind of navigating things, because for us, we are trying to use more modern technology through Facebook, YouTube, things like that, to reach a younger audience and keep, this funnel full and keep sales coming in. But people that are our age in agriculture are not the decision makers. So we're
Yeah.
having to talk to sons that are going to go to their dad or their grandpa and say, hey, Pawpaw, I want to buy this Brahman bull from V8 Ranch that I saw a Facebook ad about.
Yeah.
And that's something, as we're, trying to keep one foot in the past with what works and find other things that are going to work in the future. Even if it's long format blog posts that we write, it would be very easy to share those with Kat's dad via Google Doc. He could leave comments and do all of that. But we have to print out pieces of paper, put them on his desk. He'll get a red pen out and write notes, and we've got to do all of this. And that is something that I think is unique to agriculture, is that the decision-making age is much, much older than what other industries are.